Hi, I'm JoAnn Morrell, and I'm part of the Backstitching Contemporary Needle Art Show. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about my history and background and how I got to the work that I'm doing for the show and today. So I started out with, my parents had a factory, my mom and dad, and I worked at the factory for a bit and learned a lot about production, and I ended up having a few commercial sewing machines at home in my home studio. And so for 20 years I had a business of making clothing and selling it at the big craft fairs. So here's a couple of pieces from that phase. So I had a line of clothing and I kept it very basic, very classic, and then I would do what I was calling Zen applique on the pieces. This is a top, and here's a dress that has, and then I would add a little detail, like put a little belt in the back to cinch it in. And then from there, I stopped that business and started getting involved in home slow design, which is using a lot of hand stitching. All this work that I was doing originally was done on machine. And I was very greatly influenced by a woman named Natalie Channon, who has a business called Alabama Channon. So I started, and also the other piece of my history is that I've thrifted for many years. When I went away to college, I started going to Goodwills and thrift stores. And so I've always incorporated, if I see a piece that's beautiful, has beautiful fabric, but maybe I don't like the design, I'll bring that fabric into something that I'm working on. Or I have a purse here that when I first started making my purses, this was a coat that my father used to wear when I was a kid, and I just always loved this fabric. And so I had a bag that I liked the design of, so I cut the coat apart, and every time I use this bag I think of my dad. And so you can do things like that, bring pieces in or reuse things that you've had in your own history and keep them alive that way. So the Alabama Channon work, this is a piece that I did. It's called reverse applique, and it's all done by hand, and you use 2 layers of fabrics, and then this pattern is one of Natalie's, and then you cut out the top layer and it reveals the color underneath. And then I also did a skirt. This is all hand sewn, and it's a great way, if you find really cool t-shirts, you can incorporate parts of the design, and then I'll do a little bit of stitching over top of it to add a little bit of color, like a few little things here and there, and using a lot of different colors in the threads, which is another way to add detail. And then here's another skirt just like that, except it's all done in black and whites, and then I have red and green and different color threads in it. And then this is a shirt that I made from recycled t-shirts that I made to go along with it. And then in the winter time, I do the same thing, except I do it in wool. And these are all done on the machine. So that's a wool sweater that I did, pieced together a bunch of cashmere sweaters. And again, just use a whole bunch of different colors to come into it. And then lately, most of the work, this will be in the show, this wool piece, but the latest stage of my career, so to speak, is doing the Morrell work, which I have a jacket here. And this is called sashiko. There's patterned stitches. And there's a skirt that I did for myself. It's called Morrell, or visible mending. So this is one of the jackets that's going to be in the show, and again, related to my thrifting, I started getting just jackets that I find at the thrift store. You can find amazing things that are high quality, and a lot of it goes to the landfill if it doesn't get sold. So I like the idea that I'm reusing this stuff and saving things from going into the landfill. So this one I added on sleeves to that are made out of different pieces of cashmere and wool. And then it's just fun. I always take off all the labels on the stuff that I recycle and keep the interesting ones and incorporate them in. This is like a binding, and then just different fabrics. This was a pair of pants. This was a pair of pants. This was a fabric I've loved for years. And this is the sashiko pattern. So a lot of what I did originally was much more free form, but now I've been starting to incorporate these patterns in the pieces. And then in the front, same thing, just little accents of stitches and some nice labels to jazz that up. So this is a wall piece that I did for the show, and I am utilizing a lot of the techniques that I use on the bags and the jackets, working with denim, and some of the denim I printed with mono printing, which is a jelly plate that you brayer on acrylic paint, and then you do different things to it to give it texture and design. And so that's this piece here, and this piece up here is done that way. A lot of the pieces in this piece. And then what I do is I just kind of accent the design with stitching and all kinds of things. I have a stone thrown in here. I love pieces that are distressed in some way. I have a friend that gave me his jacket, his jean jacket from high school that was really distressed, and so you can do things like open up the seam and it's a real dark blue, but then the outer part is all distressed. So some of that, I think this piece went in to this piece as well. So it's a contemporary take on the Morrell techniques. And again, the stitching really did, it strengthens the fabric. So when they were preparing those clothes, when they were using those stitches, it really strengthened the fabric as well. Here I'm using it more decorative and just kind of accenting certain things. And I fooled around with the orientation and ended up liking hanging it this way. So here's one of the jackets that's going to be in the show. Again, this was a jacket that I bought at a thrift store. And in this case, I cut the sleeves here and then added some sweater to it. These are different wool sweaters with some decorative stitching on it. Again, some accent here, and I put a bunch of the labels that I've saved from different pieces. This is a sashiko pattern that I put here. And this is a pair of pants. These are kids' pants. I recently started looking in the kids section because they have some really fun patterns in their pieces. You don't get as much fabric, but you know it's nice to incorporate some of those fun patterns. And then on the back, I really jazzed the back of this piece up quite a bit. These are all wool actually, and this is all hand cut. I designed the stencil, cut it out. I do a lot of mandala work, so this is kind of, to me, like a mandala in the center. I got some of these beautiful wools from a friend that are hand dyed. And then this was the yoke in, I think it was a piece of overalls, and I just liked the shape of it. So I cut that piece out, and then I did one of these sashiko patterns on there, and then on the side of this jacket on both sides. And this is kind of fun. I used the belt loops on the pants and just cut off the two ends that fold under because it made it very thick. And then again, you can see the variety of color that you can get with denim, a lot of different colors. And then this is some more of that hand-dyed wool on the side, and I did the same thing on the other side. So this is a little jazzier than I typically do, but I did this one particularly for the show.